Hi, and welcome back to the Conscious Shoes podcast. Today we're here with the bearded mystic. Um, Introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, Jake, for first inviting me onto the podcast.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, and so a bit about me. I have a podcast, the Bearded Mystic podcast, with Rahul and Singh, which is my name. I've been a spiritual practitioner for around 20 years now, so all that accumulation of practice and learning, I kind of now share in the podcast. And currently, we're diving deep into the Bhagavad Gita and some of the uh, wisdom of the mystics as well.
Yeah, I love it.
Um,
I've listened to some of your stuff. It's brilliant.
Thank you, thank you. And then obviously due to that, then I've mainly been on TikTok in terms of it, the main content creating. I normally just do my stuff on TikTok, and I've gained a bit of a following on there, which is good because what's interesting is a lot of young people are being attracted to this message.
Yeah, that's what I'm noticing at the minute. There's a big shift in there.
Yes, absolutely, a massive one. So yeah, really, that's what I've been doing. And I just want to say you're the first podcast on which I'm a guest on. I was meant to do one yesterday, but I wasn't too well during the week, so I postponed that till next week. So you're the first one.
Oh, nice.
So
That's it. The first of. So yeah. What what happened? Like, what got you into spirituality? What sent you in that direction?
the interesting thing here is that I'm I've always had a spiritual upbringing. So, from what I remember, we always used to go to a satsang, and my parents were relatively quite spiritual,
Oh, wow.
and at least they instilled those values into myself and my brothers. And from there, really, I would say from the age of 16, I started to like question everything
Yeah.
and to formulate what would end up being what I kind of believe in. So, although I don't believe in everything that where I go for satsang, where I believe in everything they say, but
You hear the
um,
truth in it. You hear the hidden truth in it.
yes, and whatever they directly experience, allow you to experience, which is the truth. I go with that, and I ride that wave basically now.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so to be honest, that's when it really began. So it's never had a so it's never really had a beginning from what I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. It just slowly happened over the years.
Yes, and then I would say in 2010 is when things hit a a breaking point where I everything crumbled for me. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
went through the. I know, Jake, if you know about how people have this, there seems to be this journey that is reoccurring, especially in the Asian community, but I think it's also happening in the West as well, where we're basically going through an atheist stage,
Yeah.
and
Society as a whole.
yeah, we go through this atheist stage, and then we realize, oh, atheism doesn't have the answer, and then we come back to
Atheism just gives you more questions.
yes, yes, that's questions which they cannot answer,
Yeah, they're
and
too
uh,
deep.
yeah, and that's what's was disturbing for me. So, and then so I went through my atheist point, then went back to, then I discovered the teachings of like Osho and Ramana Maharishi,
Yeah.
and then, uh, you know, I kind of stayed with that J Krishnamurti for a while, and then,
Oh, he's brilliant.
I, and then from I would say this year I discovered I knew about Rupert Spira before. I read his book actually, Being Aware in 2020. Um, but I would say in 2021, I felt a close affinity to what Rupert was saying, because the things I wanted to portray in my podcast, he's already doing. So, he is already doing, and he's
Yeah.
still continuously refining it.
Yeah. The
And
the clarity that comes from Rupert is just it's just I don't even it's
it's
amazing.
beautiful.
It is
It's
amazing.
so I feel from him, I now understand what my vision is, especially for the Hindu youth who I see. The where I disagree with Rupert maybe is on the traditional teaching and the impact it can have. But I see his point, by the way. Like
Yeah,
I totally see his point. Like he's right in what he's doing completely. But for me, I think when you got people who are questioning their traditions, you can't get them to uh,
disbanding it.
yeah, because there's some beauty in the tradition that they need to know
Yeah,
first before they can let go of it. Um, so I feel right now we're at an interesting point, like in my journey as a seeker, and for other people to kind of share our perspective on the truth and on that reality. Um, because with Rupert's teaching, and the reason why I mentioned this at the end is because I feel now that I can, what I wanted to explain for many years, I now have the language to explain.
yes,
I didn't have it before.
yeah. You know the experience and you know it deeply, and you know what it is you're trying to convey. It just doesn't come out.
Yes. So basically, like the experience that Rupert gives in his talks and people like him, they've I've had that experience with my guru, and my guru also took us directly to the truth. But the issue that comes in is how does one bring this into their practical day-to-day life,
Yeah,
and you have to find that for yourself. A lot of people want the guru to handhold them,
but it
and
doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like
no,
that.
yeah, it doesn't. You have to find it for yourself. You have to find how you got to adapt this truth to your day-to-day life, and with all its nuances and um, idiosyncrasies, you have to
Yeah. See,
find that
that's
way.
that's one of the issues I found. It was when I was meditating and doing my practice, and I was in that bliss. I'm just fully there, and
Mhm.
then I wake up in the morning and I've got to go to work, and it's like, for a while, it really confused me because I was like living this spiritual life at night, and then not in the day, and then it was slowly it's been incorporating the both together.
Yes, Jake, what you've mentioned here is really beautiful because a lot of people they can't handle the duality in the beginning. So
It's
they
challenging.
have yes, and and I find this when people comment on my TikTok page, is they kind of see the material life as completely like wrong and evil,
Yeah,
and
it's
I'm
like it's
like,
completely
no,
separate.
it's not evil. Just let it be. Like
Yeah,
if you know what awareness is, and these people claim to know what awareness is.
yeah,
So I'm saying, if you know what awareness is, you shouldn't be having any feeling of something being great or being evil.
yeah,
You should just see them as if you have desire, you have desire. That's it. Just end the kind of just end the feeling there. Don't keep going into it. So I think what you mentioned there about it coming together is the most important thing, and I think it's where uh,
I
I
think that
often
practice goes on forever.
yes, it will continuously go on forever, and we will face new challenges in life. We will face new uh, issues in life. For example, we never knew how to handle a pandemic before. Now it's in our psyche on how to, well, for a lot of people, how to deal with it. And later on, when there's another pandemic, it'll be totally different, and it'll be a totally different situation. And we'll
Yeah,
be in a totally different headspace at that time.
yeah.
So a lot of things will, so life will have its challenges. We have to understand that we have to keep awareness, at least at the background, while everything is happening at the foreground and at the forefront.
Yeah, yeah. Just remember it's there, and that's the challenging part. It's just when something comes up, it's just reintroduce that awareness to the new challenge, and then just embrace it. And then I don't know. It's hard to say it in words, but
Yeah, I see. Yeah, you have to allow that awareness to be there in the background, and
yeah,
you know it's what Jay Krishnamurti said very beautifully. Let the observer become the observed. Eventually, that's the stage you've got to be at. And with that stage, there is no duality between the world and awareness. The background of your awareness, even though in the background it knows that everything at the forefront is
Yeah.
a projection, it's an appearance. Don't get attracted to it. Just see it for what it is, deal with it, and move on. But what happens is, because we then let the ego take over, and the ego loves to identify. That's its job. Yeah, it's its nature to
Yeah.
identify.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't condemn the ego at the same time.
See,
Um,
that was an issue I had for a long time. I was making the ego an issue. It was almost like I couldn't have ego. That's one of the stages I went through. It was like I went through the stage of thinking that I couldn't have an ego, or the ego needed to be destroyed. But over time, I realized that that was actually perpetuating it. That was making it worse.
yes. So it's because people read things like in the spiritual books, and they see. I mean, I also thought you had to get rid of the ego, and
Yeah.
what I didn't realize was they're not talking about actually getting rid of the ego per se. What they're talking about is getting rid of the attachment to the ego, the
Yeah.
identification to the ego.
Yeah.
And it's a subtle point which maybe now I've been thinking about, looking at the traditional texts and reinterpreting them. I mean, that will take over years, obviously, but my plan is that eventually to look at the traditional texts of the East, particularly in Advaita Vedanta, and reinterpret them with the right
Understand.
understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very necessary, because if people think they're going to get rid of the ego, they're in, they can wait lifetimes then.
Oh, that's yeah, that's it. It just goes on forever. Like you've just got to come to
Yeah.
realize that you can't. You just can't do it. It's part of life. That's part of the beauty, to have the sense of separation, but not to take it too seriously. I think
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
we should live a life that seems separate, and we seem to have this separation between us, but that's what makes us commune with each other.
Yeah. Look, for example, when I often tell people that it's very, I prefer people to live in the world, be completely in it, be immersed in it, and be spiritual at the same time. The reason for that
Yeah.
is because there are certain things that I know that I get as being a husband, which I wouldn't get if I was a monk.
Yes.
The things I get as being a son to my parents and to my in-laws, uh, um, you know, I wouldn't get that as a monk. And these experiences is what makes you relatable to other people, because how can you say that you can people can practice spirituality in the household when you cannot relate to their problems?
Yeah. 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 One
You
hundred
know, so
percent.
uh, you have to live a complete life, and it's beautiful. Like I wouldn't like to have it any other way. I sometimes joke with my wife that, oh yeah, I would have been a monk if I didn't marry you.
I've said the same
Uh,
thing. I'd just go off and live somewhere and just completely remote and
yeah, yeah, yeah. I often say to her, and I said, but you know what? This pandemic is very beautiful, that it brought solitude into my home. It allowed me to have the monastery in my own home.
yes.
Um,
See, I think there's been a bit of a collective shift, like you say, with the younger generation, especially like my age. It's like when COVID hit and everyone had to go indoors and no one was seeing each other physically, and we all had to be with ourselves. And
hmm.
I think a lot of people realized that they couldn't actually be with themselves comfortably.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what's created what they say is going to be the next mental health pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, but in my opinion, and yes, that's very real and very much there, that people aren't comfortable with themselves. But you see how people are not going to deal with the actual root cause of why that's happening.
Yeah.
People are going to look at the symptoms, but they're not going to actually look at what actually is causing this suffering. And the whole point of spirituality is to get to the root of that suffering,
Yes.
which which is why I think when I've seen spiritual people, for me, 2020 has been an eye opener where I've seen spiritual people that I followed for many years. Like, like since 2010, I gained some friendships, and I don't know how much you noticed this, but I saw people going on to the QAnon and that drift.
Yes, see, I even had a slight phase of that.
You
It
did,
did.
yeah. It's very easy.
Oh,
It's
it's
very easy
so
to get
easy,
into that.
so easy, so easy. It's like a bit of a cult, I'd say. It's very strange.
Yeah,
It's how you get drawn into it.
absolutely. I mean, see, when I condemn those things, people seem to think that uh, I don't understand. No, I actually can I can actually see how I can get, like you said, drawn into it. I can get absorbed into it. I can see myself. Um, so when I've seen people who was on my Facebook for many years, and they were all talking about oneness in the beginning, and then when they shifted their message, and I was like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, they
And
went all negative, and
yeah, and especially I think it was when the Black Lives Matter incident occurred, is when I was like, whoa, this is interesting.
it was
Then I started seeing how it. Go on.
sorry, yeah, sorry, go on.
Then I saw it infecting the yoga circles and then the wellness circles. Because I used to know about JP Sears before he turned into whatever he is today. Um, but I didn't really enjoy his content before, but he seemed to have this honest take. But now I see that people understand where they can make money in this wellness slash new age slash spiritual slash yoga circle.
There's a big business there.
Yeah, I've seen Russell Brand go into it. I mean, it's a shame. I love Russell Brand, but I've seen him go into it now, and
Yeah,
um, it's like what happens? What causes people? And I think it goes back to that point of suffering, is that when you don't know what to do with information by yourself, because you are not sure about yourself, you've been hiding that away for many years, and you've been doing these practices thinking you can get rid of. You're getting rid of your ego. Oh yeah, you're feeling love for everyone.
yeah,
All that lovey.
yeah.
Uh,
It starts off flowery and rosy to
yeah.
begin with, but over time you slowly realize that the real effort comes in the self. Is That's where you got
Yes.
to get through the deeper layers of. Like, I've learned the most through isolation, and then through isolating, and then going back into the world, taking what I've learned from the isolation back into
Yes.
the world, and then going back into isolation, having experienced what I experienced in the world, and it's just been a process of that over and over again.
Yes. Yes. So as spiritual people, and as practitioners, we do have to be really alert with what we consume, what we see. We have to always be rooted in rationality and logic, which is why I like what Rupert does, because he goes back to that. Him and Swami Stavropriyananda, I've noticed, will always go back to rationality and logic.
Yeah, they don't stray too
Because,
far, do they?
and there's a reason for this, because even I remember once on one of my TikTok lives, we went through the Guru Gita, and it's a Kashmir Shaivism text, and in there, one of the points that you need to have as a practitioner is uh, you need to make sure that a teaching or a practice is rooted in rational thinking. So this has to be in the mindset of everyone. So whatever we think, whatever we see, we do have to question it.
Yeah,
And we do have to understand where it's coming from and what its end goal is. Like Krishnamurti talks about seeing the thought from the beginning to the end.
yes,
Basically, that's what we have to do with everything we consume. And I know we go through a load of information, but actually, I've been practicing this, and what happens is the amount of information you consume actually becomes a lot less because you have to concentrate on one thing to another, and time flies by. So
yes.
you,
It's quite. There's a lot of effort involved, especially in this day and age, because TikTok is just endless. It is
oh yeah,
endless.
definitely.
I found myself before just I'll just nip on for 10 minutes, and before you know it, I'm an hour later watching some. I don't even
Oh,
know.
oh yeah. I was joking in my last TikTok live. I think it was days ago, like I came across so many of these buy these crystals, or tarot card readings, and
Yeah, you start finding
manifest
yourself,
this.
you start drawing to it, and I'm like, and then I step back and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm like, and I look at their views, and I'm like, what? They have so many, and there's me thinking I'm talking about the truth, and I'm getting nowhere.
this
It's
this
very humbling.
no, that's it's funny you say that because like you say, you can look at some spiritual gurus, like I'm not going to mention names, and on YouTube and stuff, and it's very new age, hip,
Hmm,
like
yeah,
there's a lot of glam in it. It's all about getting mega wealthy and manifesting all your dreams, and they'll get millions of views, and then I'll watch a video of Rupert's, and it's just it's just gone so deep into the truth, and it might have 12,000 views.
yeah, yeah. You know what's interesting? So let's make it a bit more nuanced here. Yeah, those are the like manifestation people. Yeah, but I did a reaction video of one of Rupert's and then one of Jim Newman's. And you know, Jim Newman's one was more popular.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, why is that? And I was thinking, well, yeah, think about it. Jim Newman is giving people a pill which gives them uh, instant gratification, like fast food. It's like McDonald's.
It's the
You,
yes, the fast food of spirituality.
while you know what, you're gonna feel hungry after a bit, and you're gonna want the next hit.
Yeah,
Um, no matter how much, if you've had like 10 Big Macs, you're still gonna feel hungry after an hour.
yeah,
So, but with Rupert's one, it's like having a 3 Michelin star restaurant experience. It's a 10-course meal. You have to go through
stage
it
by
slowly,
stage. Yes,
and each point is each dish, each course is like perfection. It's art, and that's what I feel. And yeah, no one's going to be willing to go through the 10-course meal because there's the McDonald's down the road which can just satisfy their hunger right now.
yes.
You know, so I feel, and I feel like we have to make conscious choices today. That do we want to be the people that go towards the fast food, or are we going to be the 10-course people and present that to people?
See, I
Because
would
you got to remember, we have to make that choice all the time, every time. Like every time we put a video out, we got to think like that, or a podcast, we got to
yes,
think like that.
yeah. I find that I'd rather put out the deeper truth, and even if it's not as appealing necessarily to the general public, I know that the people that will hear it or the people that will follow it are the ones that are really going through it,
Yes, yes,
and you
yes,
build a lot stronger of a community, I think, because they really understand where you're coming from, and they've had that experience of, like we say, non-dual awareness, and they're deeply rooted in that.
yes. You know, Jake, what I found is, and this goes back to a lot of what Rupert is doing in the spiritual circles, is the friendship element. I've not been looking at gaining massive amount of followers on TikTok or on YouTube. I mean, yeah, of course, I have that in the back of my mind because I'm like, I want to do this full time.
Yeah.
So it's there in the background. But at the forefront of everything, I'm there to deepen and foster friendships. That's my approach. And and what I found is people are like I talk regularly with 2 or 3 people, and it's small right now, but I appreciate those friendships a lot because it's centered in spirituality, and it's being a friend. Like
Yes.
they feel open to talk to you about everything, and they trust you. And there's a different level of trust that you have with a spiritual master and um, a disciple. But even I found with my own guru that we transcended that into like a best friend type of thing. And your spiritual teacher does become your best friend if you listen to their teachings and actually practice it.
See,
Um,
see, it's weird. I find that, like, even though I've not even, it's bizarre because I've not necessarily spoke to Rupert directly or met him in person or anything, but there's like this weird deep gratitude towards him for
Mhm.
what he's helped me understand, and it's strange. It's hard to put it into words.
Yes, yes.
It's like a
And you know,
connection beyond the physical level.
yes, and and that's because he's wanting to create that. You know, we have to be very honest in the fact that a lot of people who are teaching spirituality or Advaita or Neo Advaita, they don't really want to know their disciples deeply. I have found that when I attended his webinars, Rupert's, sorry, what I found was that he recognized people, and I like that.
Yes, yes, and you'll notice when he starts it is looking at who's in there, and he'll notice the
Yes.
familiar faces. He'll notice the, and like you say, it's
Yeah, I want to actually discuss that a little because my first experience of the webinar was exactly him looking at everyone on the gallery view
yeah,
on Zoom. And I had my video on at that time, and I felt an energy when he was going through that. I didn't know he was actually looking at people until I looked back at the recording.
yeah.
And so, but at that time, I remember feeling a particular energy that he was looking at us, uh, and that was unique.
It's strange.
But
I could only
go on,
imagine what it's like in
person.
an
Yeah.
in-person retreat, because they say that there's the grace of the guru, and there's something about that I could imagine that the physical presence. I know it's a bit more into the mystical side of things, but they
Yeah.
say that the presence of the guru, if they're truly rooted and established in that, then we should just naturally, it should be a natural connection. It's beyond, they don't even have to say anything to us. It's just there.
Absolutely, it's there. Absolutely. I can only I can only go by the experiences that my guru gave me, which was it was always whenever I met him, it was full of. It was hard to explain the unconditional love that you get, and what you talked about, that grace. This is something that a lot of people do not appreciate. And what's amazing for me right now is listening to someone from the West, from England, uh, talk to me about the grace of the Master. Do you know how incredibly amazing that is for me to hear? Because it's so important to have the grace of the Master. Because, and you know what is even better is when the Master doesn't want to be a master.
Yes, yes, because
They are the genuine ones.
then you know they're actually the master, because they're not trying to be the master; they just naturally are, and they
Yes,
don't need to say it to establish it. It's established already.
yes, yes. And yeah, when you come under the grace of the Master, uh, that can be extremely transformative. But what people miss out on, and I find this especially in the Indian community, like the Hindu community, the Sikh community, and any denomination that's come from those religions, that they may talk about the grace of the Master, but they don't want to put effort in. And they want to leave everything to the grace of the Master. But what happens is the grace of the Master doesn't disappear, it doesn't increase or decrease. It's always like it's the same.
Yeah.
It it's always there. But what we need to understand as spiritual practitioners is that we have to practice the teachings, then we open ourselves up more for the grace that's available.
Yes,
Um,
yes. It's not that they can give us more; that we just have to
yeah,
be open to receive more.
yes. And you know what's interesting? So I remember there'd be times where I would, my guru used to be, he was mainly centered in India. So whenever he visited the UK, um, we would meet him, and for some odd reason, he would know how much I developed spiritually. And I remember one conversation, he said, "I've heard that you've been improving in your spiritual journey. I'm very happy to hear this." And I was like, um, Wow. And I think, and then I found out that someone had told him that I've been discussing spiritual matters with them, but the fact was, not that, the fact that he raised it with me was a sign that this is what he was looking for. What he
Yes.
was really, I mean, obviously the chat is always about, well, what you're doing, is everything okay at home? Like, there's always that concern. Um, and people can sometimes think when they hear things like that, oh, the guru's after my worldly matters. He's interested in that. But actually, it's the spiritual matters. He's waiting to see if you're interested in that, and or she's interested in that. So they want to see if you are really wanting to go further. So the grace only works when we want to. What happens is, and I did a video about this yesterday on TikTok because someone thought I mentioned that you can't, there's no need to have a guru, where I didn't say that. Um,
Yes.
um, it tends to be a problem when someone just sees a clip of my podcast. Obviously, my fault. I post
Yeah,
that, so
the thing is, if you cut it in two, that's what I find. If you cut it too much into slices, it can be completely misinterpreted.
yeah. I mean, I always knew that, and I was like, I'm prepared for whatever happens because. And in a way, what I used to do was just write comments, but now I'm like, I'm just going to reply with video. It's just going to be a lot easier to explain it.
Yes.
Um, so yesterday I was like, okay, I'm going to address this question, and it's like I said to that person, is that the guru actually only gives you the projection of knowledge. The knowledge is always there within you. It's not like it's the knowledge of awareness, or when I say knowledge, I think I want to say slash awareness
Yes. I know. I
because they're
know. I know.
synonymous.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
What people need to understand is the guru just shows you it. The teaching, they may give in a new way. It may be an ancient teaching, but they found a new way of expressing it,
Yes.
like Rupert has. Um, and what it is, the guru just shows you that. The rest is now up to you to practice it. Now, when you have, when there's pitfalls in that journey, when there's obstacles in that journey, that's when you can ask the guru questions.
Yeah.
But what I find is, if you continuously focus on the practicing, you don't really have questions. Like I sometimes I marvel, and yet um I'm highly discouraged when I see people asking questions about what's happening to
Yes.
awareness, their awareness. I'm like, nothing is happening to your awareness.
See, it's funny you say that because I joined one of Rupert's webinars with the. I signed up because I was like, I want to ask him a question about something. And I
Yeah,
went into it having this question, and then obviously we did the meditation. I put my hand up, waiting.
yeah.
And by the time we'd finished the meditation, I'd honestly forgot what I was even trying to ask, or what I was going to ask. No, I no longer needed an answer to, because it was already answered just through the meditation. And then I was like, how do these people, how can you find that some people are still having questions, and maybe I don't know, it's so strange. Like,
Yeah.
it
So
eliminated my question. It's hard to explain it. It
yeah,
just
I'm with you on this because I think the same. I think so. When I mentioned I marvel, I think, wow, I could never have that question when I listen to it.
yeah.
Then at the same time, I'm like, but if you're in the practice, where did this question come from? And and then you go into, well, it came from awareness. So let's just go back to awareness.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what is going on?
It's such a
And then
paradox sometimes.
yeah, it is. And but I'm on um, Rupert's WhatsApp community,
Oh,
and you
I'm
know
in there
what?
as
Some of
well. Yeah.
the people on there are amazing. Like some of this, what I really like, because I'm part of a few spiritual groups, like on WhatsApp, but that is the one group where at least I find people are genuinely wanting to discuss spiritual matters.
Yeah,
There's
the
obviously there's
real
banter.
truths.
Yeah, there's banter here and there, obviously, but um, but it's rooted in that, and I like that a lot because, and it's not like the one thing I also want to mention, which is really important in the guru and disciple dynamic, is what I find less in Rupert's meetings is, do you know that look that people have where it's like glossy-eyed, like
Yeah.
mesmerized,
Yes.
that kind of uh,
Just you can tell.
adulation. Yeah, you look at them, you're like, oh no, here's another one that's going to go down a dark path later on, because the adulation they're giving to the guru right now is just a projection,
Yes.
and they're going to go down, and they're going to go down the path of possibly resenting the master eventually, because that's what happens when you have that glossy-eyed, like kind of. But I've noticed there's only a few of those on Rupert's webinars.
Yeah.
If
See,
you look at Muji's, not criticizing Muji and his teaching, but the people, there's a lot more of those people there, and I don't know whether Rupert has dissected people to not have that adulation.
what I find with Rupert is like most of the time, if someone asks him a question, it's like he can almost always take them back to awareness. It's not like
Yes.
if they're ready to hear it. It's like he can almost always do it. It's like he has this power, because sometimes I can explain these matters to someone and it's almost like they're just completely missing what I'm saying, whether I'm
Yeah.
not communicating it properly or they're just simply not open to the possibility. But Rupert just always seems to take them back.
I think that's because I can only speak for myself. I'm not fully there yet where he is. So
You're there, but
wherever
you're not
he,
there, if that makes sense. I
yeah,
get that a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah. Like we have to be really honest with where we are. Obviously, we know we're only consciousness and we're only awareness. Obviously, we know that, but the mind still has to catch up to it. Our mind is basically still catching up to
See,
our background awareness,
it's
if
funny
that
you
makes
said that.
sense.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you, is like, what do you think the impact is on the mind and body for the people? Because obviously we understand this, but let's say there's someone listening to this, that what do you think happens to the mind and body when true recognition takes place?
So people have different experiences, and I think this is where I feel the concept of reincarnation is very helpful, because the reason why I say that is because whatever will happen to your body and mind will be unique to you. Like no one's gonna have the same experience.
Yes.
So what you like, for example, when J.K. went through his awakening experiences and eventually leading to enlightenment, and even throughout his life, he would have terrible pain in the body, and he would be crying like a child. And people would say he's totally different than what he is on stage. On stage, he's this magnificent teacher, but in the night, he's screaming like a child. He's upset. He's distraught. He's crying. He's asking for his mom. It's different.
Yeah.
Um, and but I haven't had that. Mine hasn't had any impact on the body. So I'm assuming that maybe I've done yoga practices in the past where it's not impacting my body. So, um, so that's just the body, right? Now the mind. Now even there, Jake, I have not had. We talked about the questions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I never had questions, and I find it tough to create questions about this. But what I will do always is give a report card of where I am.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I used to do in my guru. I used to say, well,
Yeah.
this is where I am right now. And this is where I noticed my ego took over, and I was aware of this. And so, there's things like that. So for me, what happens to the mind is a bit more complex, because you're also dealing with matters in the day-to-day life as well.
Yes.
So
But
it's
what?
all about how you can calm those two down, really. But
Yeah.
go on, I think you had a follow up.
What also might have helped is, like you say, you was raised in traditions and raised in sadhana,
Mm.
and maybe from a younger age the message was being interpreted, but on the level of awareness, not on the level of your mind and body. And it might have been a consequence of the conditioning that it hasn't hit you like that. Because for me, I went to a Christian school. Well, I wasn't really. I wasn't. It was. I'm not Christian, and I wasn't Christian, but I went to a Christian school where we did prayer and we went to church. But there was all. I was always skeptical, even young. But there was also a part of me that was, but what if what they're saying is real? And
Mm.
I think from a young age, I've always had deep questions like that. Like we were talking about on your live. Like from a young age, I was questioning like the size of the universe and how it's infinite, and I just couldn't get my head around the fact that it's infinite. Like, how big is that?
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I know what you mean. Like in terms of, oh yeah, I'm very fortunate. I see that I may be in extremely fortunate circumstances, um, that I've been able to have a spiritual upbringing. But the trappings of tradition I've also had to face. Like, for example, I
Yes,
also went
yes.
to a Christian school. So imagine having the non-dual teaching and then the completely dualistic teaching at the same time. What that does to a child is completely
Yeah,
crazy.
I could imagine. I could imagine definitely. See,
um,
for me, I didn't discover Rupert until after my recognition. Funnily enough,
yeah, I remember you saying. Yeah, I remember you saying that. That's
it
interesting.
it was bizarre because and I've never like you were saying, I've never had a guru, well, a physical guru. I've only ever listened to people, and my transformation was pretty quick.
Hmm.
So what it was, I moved out from my parents, and after I moved out, I went through this stage of recognizing what had happened in my youth wasn't necessarily, and I went down this deep depression basically,
Hmm.
and I refused to take medication. I was a bit stubborn. I was like, if I can't figure out why I'm this way, then I'm just I can't say that I can take medication just to numb it. I need to know the root of this. And I went through this phase of about a year just not caring about anything, and then this brought me to the psychedelics. I had a psychedelic experience which just almost made me question everything even more deeply. And
Mm.
then I found an Alan Watts video on YouTube by accident. And then I went
Nice.
down the rabbit hole of Alan Watts. And he was talking about, like, because Alan Watts wasn't necessarily one tradition, was he? He always talks
Mm.
about many, many, many different traditions and how they're all talking about the same thing.
Yes. Yes.
And I remember it was so funny. I was almost chasing enlightenment because I heard it. I heard about it, and I was like, I've got to get that. I've
Yeah.
got to get enlightenment. And I just spent so long chasing it. And I remember I was sat in back garden, and I was like, I was frustrated because
Mm.
I was like, I'm never going to get this. I'm just never going to understand it. I wasn't saying it out loud, but internally, this is what was happening. So I just put the phone down, stopped watching the video, and then I just said, you know what? I give up. It'll happen when it happens. And in that moment, that's when all of a sudden, like, the subject objectness of everything collapsed,
Beautiful.
and all I was looking at was myself. And I try and tell these people, and I think they just, because at the time I couldn't explain what had happened to me. I could just not put it into words what had happened. So, but obviously I can now. But the subject objectness collapsed in me, and that's when the body started getting impacted, and the whole body just sort of expanded.
Mm.
I closed my eyes, and the body and the mind just expanded all at once, and my sense of separateness also expanded and at the same time dissolved with that expansion. And
Wow.
in the expansion, there was just a recognition of when I was telling you about the light, and because this is one of the things I was always trying to find videos talking about that kind of experience, and like you were saying, it's a very individual thing,
Hmm.
and I was trying to find answers on that specific topic, like the light, along with the recognition, because you don't really hear Rupert talk about these things, or do you know what I mean? And
Right. Right.
the light sort of consumed me as I expanded, and I literally felt time and space dissolve.
Mm.
And I was
Mm.
just in this. I couldn't even question it. I knew for a fact it was God presence. There was
So,
no questioning. There was nothing I could.
so how do how about now? How does it when you have to speak to people about this? How is it now?
Well, the weird thing is after that experience, I was just in tears after, completely in tears. Like I was crying at the sight of a cup. Like
Mm.
I know it sounds bizarre, but everything was just beautiful. Like
Yeah.
everything, everything was life. And then I found Rupert's videos, weirdly enough, and he started explaining what what had happened, and I was like, right. So
Yes.
that's where Rupert's
Yes.
helped me a lot because he's not necessarily leading me up to it. He's helping me understand what had happened. It's like the opposite way around for me.
Right.
He,
Right.
he he's helping me understand what it's like. The mind's playing catch up. The mind's been playing catch up for about 2-3 years,
Yes.
and it does
Yes.
take a while for the mind to catch up with what happened. And for a while, I was chasing that experience again. I was trying to chase that momentous experience,
And it
which
never comes
it never
back.
comes. It never comes back.
Yeah.
But what I notice is that the bliss and the peace and the love comes back, but not the momentum of the experience. It's hard to explain because I think what happened is this is funny you say this about the Rupert Spira community group in WhatsApp. Is it Hika, something like that? She speaks in there quite a lot.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
asked her this question and she said, well, the level that it impacts the body and mind depends on the severity of the conditioning before the recognition.
Mm.
So
Yes.
let's say the
Wow.
mind and body was in a tight knot before. So the tighter the knot, when let's say something snaps that knot, the reaction of the knot snapping is almost it's more intense.
Mm.
So when that recognition took place in me, because of like I was saying, the deep depression and the the things from childhood and whatnot, I think
Mhm.
because of all of that, when that recognition came and peace and bliss came, it was magnified infinitely because of all the years of suffering. Whereas, let's say someone's not been through all of that stuff, the recognition might just be very subtle and it might just be a very little recognition of, oh, yeah, but it's still the same recognition.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes. And I like that. I like what you just said. It's 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 very true. And yeah, I think I've been when I reflect that upon myself, I think I've just been very lucky. But I've had like similar experiences where I felt like expansive, then at the same completely
Yes.
at the like at that point where if you had to put the here and now in a like the here in a vertical line and the now in the horizontal line,
Yes.
that pinpoint that at the center where the lines meet,
Yes.
I'm literally also at that point. So now whenever I am in the point of awareness, I'm at the meeting point. But before, my experiences used to be really expansive. Then I realized I was like, well, what am I expanding into space or
Yeah,
awareness?
yeah, it's so good you said that because that was something for me. It's like, am I expanding or am I shrinking?
Yeah, and then I realized that actually awareness cannot be in space, so therefore I need to stop expanding because I'm going to be keep chasing this expanding. It's right here, right now. I'm going to go to the point.
Yeah.
So when you go to the point of it, the experience is it. Okay, as someone seeking spiritual experiences, it's going to be completely underwhelming. It's not going to be
Yeah.
you're not going to get this explosion and fireworks
that
of bliss and
that
gratitude, all that.
that is exactly what I learned is by that because of the one experience that sort of led me on a wild chase of just trying to get that. But then over time there was another recognition that was exactly the same but without all the fireworks and what made me realize that is by chasing the fireworks, I'm not going to realize what the fireworks taught me.
Yes, and the great thing here is when you have that recognition, that is a lot more deeper and creates a stronger foundation for the way you live your life. So,
Yeah.
we've been talking about the background awareness of Brahman or
Yeah.
pure consciousness or awareness. That that becomes more firm, and that's where, for the likes of me and you, we can discuss the fact that there is no duality between the forefront and the background. But for a lot of people, because they haven't come to this focal point that we've been talking about, that experience, they've not been able to solidify, I feel, their practice.
Yes.
That's what I feel.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the
It's
experience
almost,
should be the way we've experienced it, because
yeah.
it's the same. That experience is the same, I think.
Oh yeah. I've had the same recognition by drinking a cup of tea and just looking at some trees.
Yeah.
I'm not even
Yes, yes,
joking. I've had the same
yes.
recognition from the simplest little things, and I think people always think that it's got to be some kind of magnificent experience, but
Oh,
it hasn't.
it,
It can
it,
come in that way, but it's rare. I think.
it's rare. Yeah, and the problem is these big time, um, now I call them the YouTube gurus, but
Yeah,
they're they're the kind of people that explain the how they connect to everything, and they saw everything as one, and they saw everything as me.
yeah,
But when people do that, is yes, you give it. See, the guru says it to inspire the devotee. That's the first point.
yes,
Then the second point is that it inspires them to then go into the practice. But what happens is people are like, that guru had that experience. I'm like, but did you have that experience? Saying that the guru had it means nothing
yes,
to me or to you.
yes,
That's the guru. He reached there. When are you going to reach there?
yeah,
And
exactly.
people just get enamored by these experiences, and then they want those experiences. And like we mentioned, everyone has a unique body mind complex system.
Yeah, everyone's
Therefore,
different.
that's why I don't know, did you watch the Joe Rogan Sadhguru
I've just started
interview?
watching it. I'm about halfway through it.
You're gonna find it extremely agitating after a bit. I mean, I'm listening to it the second time because I plan to do a reaction series to it
It's very.
on YouTube.
There is a lot of contradiction in it, I would say,
And
because he talks
and
about the guru, and when he was talking about how you don't need a guru and you don't need books, but then Joe Rogan kept saying, "Yeah, but you're writing a book for people to to learn about you," and he's like, "No, no, no, no." I've noticed he completely avoids. I'm not. I'm
answering
not.
the
I'm
question.
not talking down on Sadhguru because he is a great teacher. He's got some. There's some good things that come from it, but at the same
Yes,
time,
there's a lot of.
yeah.
And you know what was interesting? I never thought it would happen on the Joe Rogan show
Oh,
where
never, never.
that Sadhguru would be shown on the spotlight, that he's not all that he is.
Yeah,
That was for me a pretty crazy experience, because I was like, no, this can't be. But what I said this in my live, that I wish now that this doesn't stop Rogan, because there are genuine teachers. Like, he should have Swami Silvapriyananda and Rupert Spira on his podcast.
could you imagine Rupert Spira on the Joe Rogan podcast?
It has to happen, and I think, I mean, I'm willing. We should actually get in contact with him, and like those two people, he needs to speak to, because one is in the tradition and one is kind of in both tradition and creating a new pathway.
Yeah, because that's what I find Rupert. He brings rationality along with it, and that's what Joe Rogan, I've noticed, he's best at. That's why I think his podcast does so well, because Joe Rogan's very
Yes.
rational. He wants to understand the components behind everything.
Yeah, and what's interesting? When Sadhguru talked about the alien experience, well, the so-called alien experience,
Oh,
and the
I'm
fact,
not that far in yet.
oh, um,
You can talk
but
about it though. Yeah.
but yeah, but we all know that Rogan has been interested in aliens and has talked about it on the podcast, and the fact that he didn't want to go deeper into that was really funny. And I was like, you should have done some research on Joe Rogan
Yeah,
before, and it's
before
not
you
very hard
went.
to know what he's into and what he's discussed on this podcast. Um, But for me, it's that uh, like when Sadhguru mentioned, I think you probably have got far enough when he talks about toolkits, that I give a toolkit
Yes.
for the experience. Now, when Joe Rogan asked him the simple question, what are those tools in the toolkit? The fact that there is no answer to that, oh, I can tell people how to sit, how to do this, that for me is a distraction from real spiritual experience, from a real spiritual uh, path. Because telling people how to sit, yeah, and in a way, Sadhguru's right. People only want to improve their body mind complex. He's
Yeah.
right on that level, like completely on an observation. But if you're a guru, you can't be telling people on a mass
Mass
level that that's
scale.
what it's
Yeah.
all about.
Yeah.
Because
I feel like, yeah, like
you,
you said, he's avoiding the true answers that needed to be answered there. Like,
yes,
he needed to come down to a relative level
yes, and
because
he
no,
was really and I think that you notice that Joe's energy becomes tired of this. You notice it eventually.
yeah, it's like he's
Uh,
so drained of it.
yeah, it happens, and I was like, um, because and this is important whenever the reason why I like Rupert's approach and why I've adapted it to the way I deal with people who contact me personally is you do have to deal with their personal problems. You do by not don't get involved in them, but kind of tell people or guiding, sorry, um, how to approach their spiritual journey
Yes.
and how to live their practical life. You don't mention whether something going on in their life is good or bad. You just say, well, this is how the spiritual practice can help you.
Yeah, and
And
this is
that's all.
probably the best way to interpret it. And that's what I love about Rupert. There's no fixed teaching. The teaching is
Yes.
completely subjective. It's almost like depending on the person and their circumstances and the way they're living in their life, and he can respond to that directly. That's the best thing, because if we listen to people's personal problems, we can then guide them more correctly.
Yes.
Because if you just keep it as a generalized teaching, like, this is where I think a lot of people go wrong with Advaita. Like you say, people hear it and they go,
Yeah.
well, nothing matters, nothing exists, and well, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's going on with this, Jake? Because they're growing in numbers on YouTube.
I
Like
know, I know.
the number of new channels that I've seen of the Neo Advaita sphere um, is pretty
I,
crazy.
I think I went through a phase of that where it was almost like there was just a sense of detachment, and there were like a long phase of just completely detached from life, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to keep in that expansive state and just not embracing the life aspect, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And you just completely you can use the teaching as a way to dismiss everything.
that's what I find. That's what I find. And the thing is, what's really frustrating for me is whenever I see these videos, is when they say like, "Oh, there's no meeting happening here." I'm like, then why have you set up a meeting?
Yeah.
Like you
Nothing matters, then
dismiss
why are you setting it up?
like if you don't, there's no need to do anything. So why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? Why are you uploading a YouTube video? Like
Yeah.
if there's no need to do anything. Um, and that's the problem is what happens is they don't understand the importance of the relative reality.
Yeah. It creates almost like a super ego, I'd say, because
Yes, yes,
it becomes like a weapon to use
yeah,
as a way to
absolutely.
as a way to justify actions, and a way to. It wasn't until, like I was saying, the recognition happened. Then I went through this long phase of trying to understand it. Then I went through a phase of detaching everything. But it
Mhm.
wasn't until I fully embraced all my personal problems and I fully embraced all my personal issues that the understanding actually went deeper, because
Mm.
those was clearly the problems in my life, and they were the things that I needed to deal with. Once I dealt with those personal things, the understanding completely changed, because I don't know, it becomes more of an art, and the beauty and those aspects come out of it, not just the nothing matters and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. Whenever I see those videos, and what I've noticed that obviously it's a lot more younger people, and they're doing these YouTube videos and they're getting popular. But my feeling there is that it is an extreme form of escapism. If the monastic life is an extreme, I think the Neo-Advaita's whole message is extreme. It's on both polar opposites.
Yeah,
Um, and I, you know, the thing is, how they can dismiss the beauty of the whole of existence that we have, uh, whether it is an appearance, the fact is it's beautiful.
yeah,
And
it exists. It does. It appears and it's beautiful. That is the right thing to say. Yeah,
and when they dismiss that as, oh, it's
it's just an
there's no,
illusion.
yeah, it's an illusion, it's not, there's nothing there. And I'm like, uh, but but then when they ask for donations, I'm like, well, something's happening. Something is there.
Yeah, because you need money.
And yeah, it's just, for me it's incredibly frustrating when I see that, because I can see how it can really be appealing for a lot of people, but it'll take them down. I guess it's okay. It's going to be a diversion for people. As you mentioned, like you went there and you came back to the more grounded spirituality.
Yeah,
Um, but I feel like a lot of more people are going to go down the Neo-Advaita route. I think that's going to be growing, and it is growing. I think that's going to continue to grow. Um, so we've got to be ready to catch them when
yeah.
when they fall,
See, that's
because
the
they will
thing.
fall.
That's the thing. But I think the good thing, even though it's being portrayed the wrong way, I think the core teaching is still going to hit somewhere deeper eventually.
Yes.
Eventually, it will prevail. But at the minute, they're going to use it as an escape. But eventually, it's like a time bomb.
Yeah, it's
It's almost
completely
like a
it.
time bomb. One day, it's just gonna. That's what I love that reference. Rupert Spira made it. It says I can say when I say these things, they might not necessarily hit straight away, but they're almost like a
Mm,
time bomb left in the mind. And
yes,
that one day the bomb will go off and the recognition will happen.
yes, yes, and when we go back to that recognition, and we make that the center point of our life, Jake, that's where the beauty is,
Yes.
and that's where everything is. When we see that recognition in the world and the relativity of it, the fact that everything that we see, perceive through our senses is based on, like you mentioned, a time bomb, a time limit. Yeah, you you appreciate those things so much more. In
Yeah.
my podcast today that's been released, the part of the Bhagavad Gita that I look at is talking about this, and I say that a karma yogi is someone who will think about where that grain of rice that's in their plate, where it's come from. They'll look at the process that it's gone through to be on their plate.
Yeah.
And when you go back and you think about those things, you become completely aware of how fortunate you are to have that grain of rice.
Oh yes.
You feel that sense of awareness. Just one, it expands in the relative reality and you see how it's everywhere. And then at the same time, you're being aware.
Yeah.
You're going back to awareness.
See, it's funny you say that.
You're living the practice.
Do you have almost like mini recognitions throughout the day? Because I've noticed that's something that happens to
Yes.
me quite a lot. It's almost like I can be established and then I sort of like get lost for a bit, but then I've noticed that it gets shorter and shorter each time, and then it's like almost it's something really random or just trigger it in, and I'm like, whoa, it's like,
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Just last weekend, me and my wife were in Paris, And when we went to the Louvre Museum and we're looking at the pieces of art, there were times in there where I was having these mini recognitions, literally, as I kept looking at each artwork, and it was because I was thinking, look at the mindset of the artist, and
Yes.
they created this that like hundreds of years ago, and we're looking at it today.
Yeah.
They've lived on
Yeah.
through their art.
It's things like the
They're
pyramids
still
as well.
alive.
It's things like the pyramids as well. Like they're just
Yes,
such monumental things that I think they represent a lot more than
a
just
tourist trap.
yeah. Yeah. I do think they represent a lot more than that, because to think that they've been there that many thousands of years.
Stood the test of time.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's almost like and the precision that they was built, and
yes.
it's just how did they have that knowledge? It's
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, so when we talk about these mini recognitions, those are really essential actually, Jake. And I think we need to see everyone's after that one big moment that we've been talking about.
yes,
But these
yes.
mini recognitions, they're the real deal.
Yes, because
They're the real deal.
they happen in the midst of the real spiritual practice, which is a relative life.
Yes, yes. You know, so yeah, when you yeah, like sometimes when I'm drinking water or I'm reading a line from the Ashtavakra Gita or from Rupert's book, it'll get me into that formless awareness. And I'm like, when I'm there, I can see how it's connected to everything that I
Yes,
perceive in the world. That's where Kashmir Shaivism is really interesting, right? Because, so, okay, so I think Rupert has this mix of Kashmir Shaivism and Advaita Vedanta and
yeah,
has met in the middle, which I feel is, I found that to be true from my own experience too, where I can see the interconnectivity of everything as my
yeah.
shared being, but also see that awareness is separate to that.
See, that's weird. Yeah, because Rupert, the way he's put that together is amazing. Because, like you say, if people go too far into Advaita and take it the wrong way, like you say, is there's like a dismissive aspect,
Yes,
and with the Kashmir Shaivism, there's the inclusive aspect. And
yes, yes.
if we mix them together with the inner and the outer, then you find the perfect balance. I find that's what it's all about. It's finding the balance of the inner and the outer.
Yes, absolutely. The inner, yeah, the balance of the inner and outer. I like that. Um, so yeah, so for me, I think people really need to concentrate more on the mini recognitions and invoking those a bit more, um, and they solidify also the experience of awareness. Because what we have to remember is awareness, if it's going through any experience at all, which it isn't, but if it is, if we have to use the relative terms,
Yeah.
it's only ever going through one experience. It's never going through multiple.
No.
It's always one. Yeah. It's not going to experience 10,000. It's only going to experience one.
One experience.
We are tapping into that one experience with our mind now and then, recognizing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the actual experience is always one. So it's a constant experience that we keep unveiling upon ourselves, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. It does make complete sense. And it's almost like the mind vanishes for a second. It's like
Yes.
it's like the mind just completely if that sound represents it
Where
properly.
can yeah, exactly.
It's like it just goes
Where can the mind exist?
yeah.
Yeah, gone. And when it's gone, uh, and that peace and tranquility, that happiness, that bliss that we talk about, that we see has always been there. I get really so a lot of people, especially in the Indian community, they use the word ananda very liberally, and I get really annoyed because you know they eat good food, they say, oh, I feel ananda, I feel bliss.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that's not bliss. You're feeling happiness, you're not feeling bliss. um Bliss is never disappears. it's always there, like awareness. The experience that we talk about is always there.
Yeah, and I find
And
that.
um,
Go on, sorry.
go,
No, it's all right.
no, go.
Well, yeah, it's weird because
Um,
it's when that recognition happens, when the bliss comes back again, it's like it does, and then the mind comes back again. It's almost like a. Sometimes you like kick yourself a little bit because you're like, how did I know this and I've recognized this multiple times, and how did I find myself here again? And then it's almost like you go back again. It's weird. You go back into the relative mind again, and then the recognitions just get closer and closer together. I think until a point there, it just sort of solidifies. I imagine that's sort of what happens. Like it completely stabilizes.
yes. What will happen eventually, and this is becoming more true and true for me, is that these mini recognitions are just also dissolving at the same time, and I'm resting more in the being aspect.
Yeah.
But I think without these mini recognitions, you never get comfortable with it. So you
No.
need these mini recognitions to be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And I really like what, we discussed this earlier, that um, spirituality is more like a grounding thing. So it's not always about, peace, love, and bliss. It can be full of pain and suffering.
Yes.
It can,
They're very important aspects.
and we have to recognize those aspects, because it's going to be, you're going to have the bliss. See, when people ask the questions in these webinars or in the satsangs of any Advaita teacher or anywhere,
Yeah.
it's because they can't understand why pain and suffering can happen with bliss and peace. They can't marry those things up.
Yeah. They sort of think that well, how you find it a lot. It's like how can pain and suffering exist if bliss and peace is all there is?
Yeah, and what they're not recognizing is the body-mind complex is going through this, not
Yeah.
awareness.
Yeah.
And the more, so when we have these mini recognitions, the more we recognize the body-mind complex will have its own journey, and it will have its own purpose in itself. But awareness itself is going to be untouched, and we have to keep going back to that. The more we go back to that, the more we can embrace awareness, as the more the body mind can embrace awareness, because right now it's going to be in conflict, because we are at conflict with it.
Yeah.
Because we think it's got to go through a different experience. But when we can do that, that's the real deal for me, is when we can start focusing more on being. And but it's good that we don't have those questions. I also find that we're very fortunate that we don't get attracted to the myriad, and it is a myriad of questions.
Yeah.
And you can get lost in that. But there are people I know who ask spiritual questions. Well, they're questions related to spirituality, not spiritual questions.
Yeah.
They can get lost completely. Like, is there free will? Is there destiny? Do we
Yeah.
manifest? Is there creation?
The thing is, you go into that and it goes on infinitely long.
Yes, and you can get into that space and you can stay in that space for so long. But real spirituality, it's relatively simple, man. It's just being in awareness. There's no complication, and that's what I keep telling one person on TikTok, because he gets it. He understands the truth. I recognize it in him, but he keeps going back into the questioning aspect, or the other thing that can happen is the Messiah complex, when you start telling people that everything is an illusion, like the Neo-Advaita
Yeah.
aspect. And you can get the Messiah complex, and you want to tell people that what they're doing is wrong, the traditions they're doing is wrong, the rituals they're doing is wrong. But in my opinion, I'm like, just let people be. Until you can solidify yourself in being. And when you have, you don't give a shit what people do. Am I allowed to say that word on the podcast?
Of course you can. I completely agree. I went through a phase of like, it's weird. I had my recognition. I just wanted to help everyone. It was weird. I just wanted to help everyone that was suffering. I noticed as well that people that were suffering, all of a sudden, seemed more, whether it was because I was trying to help more or because I'm not sure, but I seemed to start attracting people that was looking for that. And I was trying to help them, but it was getting frustrating for me because it's like there was all, they'd hear what I was saying, and it's like they'd almost understand what I was saying then. And then it's the day after and they need me again. But what I'm going to say is the exact same thing I said the day before.
Yes, yes.
And it gets tiring because it feels like you just keep going over and over and over again. And it's like, you know what? I've gave you the basic foundation of what needs to be done and you need to do it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. People, what I find is people when they go through that experience of wanting to help other people because they feel they're trapped.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's where you're wrong because people don't feel they're trapped. And you're telling them they're trapped, they're going to not listen to you. And they're
Yeah.
going to, one, have a lot of resistance. And
Yeah.
two, they're not going to like you because nobody likes being told they're trapped.
No. And it's
Um,
weird. It's weird because it's like, I think sometimes it must come across as like, it's almost like you're kind of like dismissing their whole reality, and they take
yes,
this very seriously. To them, if they didn't take it seriously, they wouldn't be suffering. So to
yes,
dismiss it like that is almost,
exactly. And that's what I keep telling this one person that stop telling people what they should do. Just let it be.
yeah,
If someone doesn't want to embrace the message, then that's fine.
yeah,
It's not for them then.
yeah,
Not everyone. See, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I think Rupert said this also, um, only one in a million, or, when we use the term, one in many really want to, uh, really want this truth and really want to
yeah,
live this truth.
yeah.
One in many actually just want to recognize the truth. Yeah, that's that. To get
Like
to that point is a massive big step.
I think that's
So
where me and you are very similar. I feel like I've always, since I was young, I've just had these deep, deep questions, and I've like, to
yes,
me, it's almost like I need not need to know, but I just got to know.
yeah, you got to put your everything in it.
Yeah,
So the one in many will be the ones that recognize and then live as the truth, live
yeah,
as being, live as awareness,
yeah,
and you can guide people, you can help them, you can hold their hand, but they also have to walk, you know,
yeah. See now, for me, it's like
and
if someone wants that help, like I just almost, I don't even approach. I don't really even. I don't approach anyone with it. If someone comes to me and they ask in that manner, or they want to know about it in that way, then I'll go into it that way.
yeah, it's like I mentioned to you, with Rupert's approach of being the friend. That is um, that is the best way. Uh,
Yeah,
that is the unique way, I think, today, because when you can help people as a friend, see their and feel their problems as a friend, you can see what they're going through and then deal with things.
yeah,
And then they're open more to awareness, I find, because otherwise, and what happens is they're open to you because you're open to them.
yeah, and it's reciprocated. Yeah,
Because if you end up saying, well, your experience is wrong, you shouldn't be suffering. No, I say, if you're suffering, that's one thing. And continue to suffer. It will end one day, but
yeah,
continue to suffer right now. But just remember, there's something that isn't suffering within you that is aware of your suffering.
yeah, and it's up to
You
you to
go
find it.
and keep, yeah. And the more you speak to them, the more they get it. And I find that people they want that more. See, the days of the mass, of the guru of the masses has ended.
Oh, definitely.
It will not work anymore. It used to. It was very beneficial at the time, and it did wonders. We wouldn't have so many people interested in spirituality today if it wasn't for that. So we have to give kudos to that.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
But today, I think we're going back to the ancient times where the rishis of the Upanishads were in little hermitages, and their gurukul or their ashram only consisted of a few people, and that's really where we're going with an online way of
Yeah, we live in a weird world at the minute, I
yeah.
think.
So now the hermitage is going to be on the laptop or the phone. The ashram's at the ashram is on the smartphone.
Well, that's the
Um,
interesting thing with the things like the metaverse and stuff like that. All these things that are
yes.
slowly prevailing. It's almost like, will we eventually? It's weird because is this consciousness evolving the Earth in a way that we're all interconnected in the same space? Because we don't all believe we're in the same space, but you get what I mean. It's like a lot of people feel they exist separately, but if everyone's in these virtual realities together, is it? How is that going to affect society?
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be an well. People can't even deal with the reality they live on now.
Yeah,
How they're going to deal with the virtual reality
yeah,
is gonna it's going to blow my mind. So I do wonder where that's going to lead to. Um, yeah, and not only that, there are people that may have several realities, not just one. Um, so adding a virtual reality, which may have then multiple layers of reality as well, is going to be very interesting to see. Actually, I think the suffering is going to deepen in people.
oh yeah,
That's where I feel eventually where human beings end up going. Because, for example, when Facebook first began, it was amazing. Now it's become the center for disinformation. So,
it's a breeding ground
where
of
what?
suffering.
Yeah, it's now become the breeding ground of suffering. Yeah, before it was liberating that you got to see your friends from high school, and
Now
it
we all
was
seek a break from it.
yeah,
It's weird. Now we have to set times not to go on it.
yeah.
It's so bizarre.
So so I think eventually everything leads to suffering, and because that's where the masses, where they are in their mindset, and that's where we are. So, but um, yeah, but at the beginning, it's going to feel liberating. People are going to love it. They're going to be like,
Yeah,
"This is phenomenal." It's like the Pokemon. Is it Pokemon Go? That
yeah.
game.
Oh,
It's
that
going to
was
be like
crazy.
that.
Yeah,
You know, that's literally how things are going to be. And but yeah, uh, I feel now we have to understand that it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality.
yeah,
And the more people like yourself with the message that you're giving, the more people listen to that, and uh, in a quality sense, I think that's going to be more impactful. So it's not always going to be about the number game. It's going to be about the quality of the message
yes,
and how much you see. What I find that's happening in spirituality is there's a disconnect in how we live in reality and what we portray as a spiritual person. And I put that in inverted commas.
yes.
It's one and the same. What you are at home is what you should be
The world.
in the world and in the spiritual circle that you're in.
Yeah,
It should be one and the same. Otherwise, that's what we talked about. I remember once a very he's a great mentor of mine, and I would say he's a mystic. He once said in a speech that in one of our satsangs that um, you can have if you have a material life and a spiritual life and you think they're two separate things, you're opening the prospect of schizophrenia,
yes.
of a split personality.
I'm so glad you said that because that's one of the things I went through for a while. It was I found it difficult to merge them, and it was almost like a split personality. It was weird. It was like when I was meditating at night, I was different to the person I was when I went into the world. It was so bizarre, and
Yeah.
like I say, when I merged them together, that's when I found the perfect balance, and it just became stable from there.
Yes, yes. And so yeah, so for me it's really important that as spiritual beings and spiritual content creators on TikTok and on YouTube and podcasts, what we need to ensure, and what I find is an increasing value for me, is I've got to be the same everywhere. While I am on my
Yeah.
podcast, I've got to be at home.
Yeah.
If I'm not like that with my loved ones, then frankly, I'm teaching a lie, a deception,
Yes.
and that has to feel big for you. Like it's got to feel like a massive deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you got to be as authentic as possible. And you know what's interesting? I think TikTok is going down that route where they want the real you. Before it was all about you sharing a message. Now it's become, I've noticed it's now becoming about, and that's why I like the lives a lot, because I get to show who I am
Yes.
as a
Not
personality.
because they don't know if you're just putting something on for a video. They don't. People don't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So, and as a person, I have a sense of humor. I like, often people think that when you're spiritual, you won't listen to like Eminem or
Oh mate,
or you
Tupac, Biggie, everything.
yeah, exactly. They won't think you listen to hip hop. They won't think you watch Netflix. They think you'd be like meditating 24 hours a day. But we're completely normal.
Yeah.
And it's I do my thing of listening to any type of music.
Yes.
I watch any type of movie. I completely have a normal life.
I think my
I love
music
having a
taste.
coffee.
My music taste is very split personality. Like 1 minute I'm listening to some Mozart or
Yeah.
something like that, and the next minute I've got like some hard style driving around in my van just doof, doof, doof. But it's just what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's me. Sometimes I'm listening to like chants and then mantras, and then the next minute I'm listening to an Eminem track, and people must be thinking, "What is he doing? Like, how did he jump from one to the other?" But you see,
That's the
awareness has not
beauty.
changed in in
Yeah.
both of those situations, and that's what I always go back to.
Yeah.
Awareness is is always going to be the same. It's the sameness, and so what I like about TikTok now is about it showing, if you are a genuine spiritual person and you can show people how to be genuinely spiritual, it's going
Yeah.
to be great.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. And I
Yeah.
think there's an opportunity for that now.
I think those that are just riding it for the money, they will eventually fizzle out because they'll slowly lose the content to produce
Yeah.
because
How much of
it's not coming from a genuine place. There's only so many times you can sell
yeah.
a manifestation course.
Yeah. Or you will manifest your best life in 2022, and then the next day someone dies in your family.
Yeah, that's
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean.
you know.
I couldn't imagine how these people must feel. They spend all this money on a manifestation course, and then a year later they're still skint.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
And that's the greatest secret, right?
yeah,
You're skint before you can remain skint.
yeah,
Actually, you can be even poorer
skint.
because you're going to give me the money. Oh, so I think this needs a part two. It's
Yes,
9:30. I think it
definitely.
needs a part two.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think we should we should split this in. Yeah, we'll split this into two. Yeah, definitely, because I feel like there's still a lot we could talk about yet.
yeah, so we'll be in touch. We'll try and create sometime either next week, sometime.
Or maybe we could do the part two on your podcast. So
Yeah, yeah, we
if you'd
can.
like,
Yeah, yeah. I haven't done any interviews on my podcast. It'll be a relatively new experience for me.
yeah.
But yeah, we can do.
But if before we go, is there one thing if there's one thing you can say to people to take away from this to practice, even if it's something small they can do, what would you?
I would say the one thing that anyone can do is to first start off with a meditation practice, before they go to awareness, before they go to the deeper aspects of spirituality, is to first of all learn how to just watch the mind for a bit. So I would say the one practice they can do, which can help them in their spiritual practice in the very beginning, and which ends up becoming a really solid practice, is meditate just for 1 minute every hour of the waking day. Put a timer on, and just for 1 minute, just watch the mind. That's all you have to do. Watch and
Beautiful.
observe the mind.
Beautiful.
That's all. Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. It's a great conversation, and we covered a lot. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Right. Well, I'll see you all guys on the next one. Bye.
Take care.